Hello. I think it started. Yes. Hey, g'day, folks. It's Greg. I'm back. It's another week of Lunch and Learn. This week went really fast, and I did spend a little bit of time thinking about our little budget and forecasting model this week, and I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about a bunch of other things. But I think I deleted my whiteboard, so I'm going to just start a new one, and then we'll begin from there. All right. Let me share my screen. Share the correct screen. Um, if you're new to the Lunch and Learn family, then please let me know in the chat. That would be wonderful, and I'll say hello. Yeah. So what have been talking about so far this season of Lunch and Learn is CI/CD, like DevOps and Data Ops and CI/CD, and how to properly organize our development environment for Power BI and Fabric so that multiple people can work on the file, use the new PBIP format, and generally do some cool stuff. So we're going to continue on that path. We're going to talk a little bit about how to do branching and merging. We're going to talk a little bit about how to set up our workspaces, which is going to be fun. So actually, let's put that on the board. So branching. I don't have my pen today, so I have to write with my mouse. So apologies for my terrible handwriting. We're going to talk about branching. We're going to talk about workspaces. Workspaces. We're going to talk about the budget and finance model itself. This is what we're going to start with, actually. The budget model. And the one that we looked at last week, which was the sample model from that YouTube video. Can't remember the guy's name, but I will remember at some point. Why I don't like it and why I want to change it. And then how are we going to capture our budget as a process? Because this is where, in my opinion, we go from DevOps to data ops, right? Because in my opinion, DevOps is all that CI/CD stuff. That's because it's a developer, in this case, a Power BI report developer, develops stuff and puts it into operations, DevOps, right? If we're talking about the way data is captured and flows into our pipelines and then gets presented, then that's where the data part of data ops comes in, right? And I think a lot of people talk about data ops, but then they just say, well, data ops is just DevOps, except you're doing it for data. I don't think that's the same. So I want to talk about how our budget's going to get captured. So the process about how that budget's going to get captured. I'm going to talk a little bit about how that model's going to work. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And that will be plenty for an hour for sure. You know me, I can rabbit on. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to let me know. If you are new and you haven't seen me before, I'm Greg, and I help businesses figure out Fabric and Power BI. And we just love doing this stuff. We love playing with it. Been doing it for a long time. Rowan's new. Thank you, Rowan. Been to a few, haven't been able to make it. Looks really interested. Hope to get up to speed quickly. Awesome. Yeah, there'll be some stuff that maybe you're like, ooh, it's a bit. You'll just have to check out the previous sessions to get up to speed with what we're talking about. But I'll try and keep it as accessible as possible. Lots of people here. Welcome all. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Messy handwriting, branching and merging, the workspaces and budgets. Let's look at our financial model that we got from our friend. And I got to give him a shout out because it's his content and I don't want to pretend that I came up with this myself. His name is, I put the link in the thing, Prophet, no, what was his name? Does anyone remember from last week? Here it is, SQL Bits. I'm going to show you the YouTube video. Bob Duffy. Here he is, Bob Duffy. Thank you, Bob, for all that you have done for the community. He's an MVP in the UK, and he does lots of P&L type stuff. Really, really interesting. Oh, we're going to talk about one other thing. IBCS. I've been promising that I would talk about this for a little while, and we haven't got to it. If you're not sure what IBCS is, you're going to learn what that is today. Yes, Karen, that will go up on YouTube. We'll give you recording for it. So welcome back. Thank you for coming along. All right. So that's what we're talking about. Branching. We're going to talk about workspaces. We're going to talk about this budget model and why Greg doesn't like it. And we're going to talk about IBCS, the International Business Communication Standard. That's what it stands for. All right, let's go. So why doesn't Greg like this data model? I said it last week. You probably know. If you look here, this is why. This is why, people. This is why. It's got a many to many in it. I just don't like many to manys. They're just not good. This is perfectly okay. Like Bob's done a great job here and it serves a purpose. But I think we can, here's what I think. I think we can do better because I've thought about this type of model. Like I've been doing this for 9 years and I reckon I've done 50 of these models, these types of models, these kind of, it's not just P&L that this applies to. This actually happens with when you're building KPI style systems as well, right? And you have a series of reports. So somebody wants to select the report and then they want it to filter down to select the various accounts in this case and or KPIs and then show the numbers for those accounts and or KPIs. And then there's a complex, ragged organizational hierarchy and then there's date and there's all these other things, right? And I don't know. I just can't get over the many to many and I have to fix it. So that's where we're up to. So we got to talk about this. We've got to talk about this and how we can approach it. So we'll have a little look at the data and what we could potentially do. So the problem, in my opinion, the problem is that this is account. So what Bob's done here is he's just taken his general ledger from his SaaS system. This could be anything. SAP, Xero, all of them. They have a GL in them. Like there's some kind of, if you're doing financial, some kind of ERP system, it's going to have some kind of GL. And the GL's generally the same. Generally, it's going to have a bunch of accounts. It might have a department. It's going to have numbers. That's what GLs look like. So there'll be varying pieces of complexity in that. But so we take a GL and you just join your account to it. Then you've just got your accounts in your GL. And then what he's done here is he's joined, this is his report, right? So if you want to do a P&L report, you select the report, it filters through the report slash account map, which is a matrix of reports and accounts, and selects the correct accounts and then gives us the numbers out of the G&L for those accounts, etc., etc. And his report's cool, right? It does awesome stuff. And you can change the report to something else. Hey, I want to see this as a balance sheet. And it just does it, right? Even though that says profit and loss statement, this is now a balance sheet. That's really cool functionality. We don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose that. But the problem with this is kind of it's almost like it's in the corner cases. It's not in the general case. In the general case, this is going to work awesome. And Bob kind of runs into this. If you watch that YouTube video I just had up on the screen earlier, he kind of runs into this towards the end of his session where he goes, everything works really well, except when I go to talk about EBITDA and these percentages and changing the formats and things like that. And then he has to kind of make some concessions because his model, because these aren't accounts, they're calculations, right? So he has to create a calculation group to make that work. Okay. And then his DAX starts to get a bit harder and and I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I'll talk about it in theory. I could be totally wrong here. And if you like, I know there's lots of people on this thing that, like Michael, for example. Michael, you might be able to tell me I'm wrong in this scenario because I know you've done a lot of financial reporting and accounting in Power BI, and you might be able to say no, it doesn't work for whatever reason. That's fine. I'm totally okay to be wrong, but I want to try, so we're going to try. Okay, here's my theory. Let's bring up the whiteboard again. Oh, I need to use a little hand to move this out the way. My theory is that the GL shouldn't be a GL. It should be a fact table. That's the first thing that irks me about that. It shouldn't just be a GL table. That's the first thing. So these should be facts, not GLs. The second thing is, and what's the difference between a fact and a GL? We can get into that in a second. The second thing is this shouldn't be an accounts table. No. because what we're filtering in our little report here is not just accounts. So these column headers, if for want of a better term, the rows here, they're not just accounts, right? There's measures in there, okay? And having played around with KPI systems where you have a mix, these mixes of measures and and regular columns, mixes, it just always gets ugly and weird. And I know there's custom visuals out there, and we'll talk a little bit about custom visuals later when we talk about IBCS, but there's custom visuals out there that handle this. You can have your accounts as columns, but then your measure comes along and you drop your measure in as an extra thing and it displays it correctly or whatever. I think that's how they handle it. I kind of watched a video about it during the week. I think that's how it works. But for me, if I'm building this, I want to push, I follow Roche's maxim. I want to push all my data transformation and my data shaping as far up the chain as possible. And that includes, in this case, in these types of scenarios, the calculation of EBITDA and EBIT and these percentages and all that stuff. I want to push that up the chain. I don't want Power BI to do that. And that's just because I know how weird it gets inside Power BI when you're trying to, because what happens is there's like a mix of contexts here. You're trying to show the thing that the calculation that makes up EBIT and EBIT in the same context, like in the same table. That's kind of what we're doing here, right? This is a calculation that is it's like a subtotal almost of all of these things above it, you know, in a various kind of ways, right? It takes your gross sales and then it takes away your discounts and then, it does that to calculate your EBITDA. So if I'm faced with this scenario in Power BI where I have a calculation that I also want to display in line, in row with with my with my columns, then I want to try and push that calculation up the chain if I can. And Michael's just said if you expand the fact table to relating to the GL, it's going to be huge. I agree. I don't want to expand the fact table so that it's got a row like it. I don't want to include the report as a piece as one of the pieces of granularity in the fact table. That's one thing I want to clarify. I thought about that this week. I was like, well, we can't just turn this into a fact table. What Michael's talking about here is like so this is just account and number at the moment and department. That's the granularity of the fact table right now, of the GL table. Account, the value, and the department, and the date, and maybe a couple of other things, but your granularity is that. And what I'm saying is, well, let's turn this into a fact table. If we turn it into a fact table, that means we need to add granularity, and then we would add the column report. And potentially, as I'm talking about here, it's no longer account anymore. It's also got KPI. So you've got KPI and value and account and department and report, which means for every report, you get a list of every account. And so then your fact table starts to go super big, right? Because you increase the granularity of the table, fact table becomes huge. Does that affect performance? Ooh. I hope it's just you, Justin, that you can't see. I think everyone else can. Yeah, I'm sharing a screen. There's got a bunch of horrible drawings on it. Okay, so if we increase our granularity too much, then our fact table becomes too big. So to solve this, I don't want to include report as a granularity thing. I'm still going to have a report table here, which is a dim. Or whatever he had there, right? So report's going to be a dim. And so that needs to filter some what we now currently know as accounts. And then that's going to filter the GL. But instead, my plan is these are not going to be accounts anymore. They're going to be, I don't even know what to call it, report line item, RLI, because that includes accounts. And accounts could be a dim off here if we wanted it to be. That would make it weird and snowflakey. Let me just get rid of this so that we don't get too confused. I probably should have just... Oh, I'm really bad at whiteboard with a mouse. So for every report line item, which includes both accounts and EBITDA and all these other bits and pieces, we're going to then filter this, which is no longer a GL because it doesn't, this new fact table. Maybe, says Greg, maybe. This is the structure I want to play with. Which makes it a snowflake schema instead of having a many-to-many in it. Better, maybe. And then maybe this all gets resolved into just a single dimension, which is like this weird report account dimension or something. We have to think about that. So let's have a look. Here's our data. We've got some transactions and stuff. We're going to bring in some extra data because we don't have our other bits yet. So we've got kind of all got the data there. I just want to have a bit of a play around with how we might transform it. So let's have a look at the query. Get some data from the stuff. Where are we getting this data from? Where did I... Here it is. C users admin, blah, 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 blah. Files. I should just create a path file. We're doing best practice, aren't we? We won't do the path file just yet. Because I'm gonna move all of this into Fabric anyway, right? Actually, this is something we were kind of talking about today in our real life jobs, is that it's kind of helpful to do stuff in Power BI first, and then figure out all the transformations and stuff, get it down pat, and then you can move those things into Fabric because Fabric is a little bit more work. Because especially if you're doing Python, right? Python's going to take a while. And Power Query, it's super easy. Now you could do it in data flows if you prefer, but if you come from the school of doing stuff, mucking around with stuff in Power BI desktop before you get too hardcore, then I kind of like this approach. All right, we're going to use that to get some data. Our data is in Excel form. Hopefully it remembers this place. It did remember the place. What did it have for us? Scenarios, organizations, accounts, account ranges. What have we already got? Transactions, accounts, organizations, and date. So we need statement and scenario. Bring in statement. These are a couple of tables I didn't bring in last week. I thought I'd bring them in. Bring that one. Connecting to data, scenario. So this is like, we're cheating quite a bit here at the moment, but we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to make our life hard a little bit in a second. I don't think we potentially even need scenario, but anyway. He uses a calculation group for scenarios as well, I think. Okay, this is called statement. And statements is report. I'm going to call it report. I get why he calls it statement, but this is his report table. So it shows us all of the different types of reports, the report sections, the heading. It's got this sum operator. So he uses this when he's doing his calculations. So I think at some point he uses DAX to look this up to figure out how to calculate stuff. And so he's got these EBITDA stuff and all that kind of business going on. So this is where he resolves those headers. So you select the report, and if you select report, I won't filter it here. I'll load it first. Oh, I loaded one called sheet 1. Oh, well. Sheet 1 found a scenario. Is that scenario key? Yep. Okay. Let's have a look here. Report. You see okay? Oh, I don't have zoom hit. Is that going to work? Yes. All right. Oh, oh, yeah. Okay, so we've got report number, we've got line number, we've got report section, different sections of the reports, includes all these EBIT things. Report heading number. Well, it's interesting. So that might be like a sort order type thing. Then the actual report heading, non-current assets, all the bits and pieces. Let's have a look at his report, his actual report. So he uses report heading as the top line, and then report section, and then account. So it shows all the accounts underneath the report headings underneath the, yeah, okay. Interesting. Okay. Now, what did I say? I said I don't want my GL, which is my transactions. Let me check which transactions I use because he's got two versions. Transactions, I used transactions.csv, the correct one. Okay. And then how many rows is transactions? 110,000 rows. Okay, currently 110,000 rows. So what are you suggesting, Greg? What you're suggesting here, transactions is in pretty good shape, actually. It is kind of a, this is big. You can tell it's been built by somebody who kind of knows what they're doing. Because see, there's no text in here. Except for this date key, but we allow that. We allow that. That means this is like a proper fact table, right? It's a proper fact table, no text, all IDs. That's what we want to see. But I am suggesting that the account key here, this one, shouldn't be an account key. It should be a report line item key, something like that. And then what will happen is that our report line items will blow out this number down the bottom here. Oh, I missed. There we go. This number will go up significantly because of that as a part of our little transformation fund. All right. Now, I don't even think that I am going to try and do this in Power Query right now because we need to set up the calculator. So there's business rules associated with those calculations. Things like if you calculate EBITDA, you need to, right now, all those business rules live in DAX here in Power BI world. And I'm saying push it up the chain. So we need something that's going to perform those calculations for us before we get up to Power BI. Now, we could try and do it in Power Query, but I think that would be pretty silly. I think there's a better tool for it, and I think that tool is Excel. So yes, this is what I'm suggesting. We're going to do it in Excel, not in Power BI. Excel is better at some things, and I think Excel's better at this. Especially if we want to do scenario analysis, what if analysis, forecasting, which is what we want to do. We want to do budgeting. All of these things, don't do it in Power BI. It's a waste of your brain. Just do it in Excel. I think I spoke about this last time. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. So I humbly submit that what we should try is to, instead of having an account description here in our thing, and they've got lots of things to resolve here, to make our report work, I am going to, maybe during a lunch and learn, but probably just during the week, and then I'll show you what I did because it'll take too long for me to figure out all the bits and pieces. I'll build out our new fact table using Excel, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. And then hopefully while I'm there, I'll also do the budgeting and forecasting bit. So it's all in the same Excel. And then we'll just have an Excel template that does all the things according to the way Greg thinks they should be done. So we're going to have a super awesome Excel. That Excel is going to do all that stuff. Now, each one of our departments in our organization is going to have their own Excel. So because one of the things we have here is department. We haven't really spoken about. And I think you might have seen in our table here, or does he have department here? Let's bring department in. Department name. We put it somewhere. So here's some departments. Corporate, executive, general and administration, inventory management, And they've each got their own little P&L here. Look at that. That's cool, isn't it? Sort of. They don't have their own budget though. That's interesting. So under our scenario, because this is kind of interesting and I think fun, each one of these departments is going to have their own budget and they're going to be responsible for building their own budget. And then we have to consolidate all the budgets together. So each department's going to have its own Excel spreadsheet. So it's going to have its own P&L and its own budget and its own forecast. And then our job as the data people is to use Fabric to bring all that together and then give them a consolidated departmental budget forecast variance analysis, bloody, bloody, blah, on top of our stuff. Okay. So that's the plan. So we'll need to build one spreadsheet for each person. And so there's going to be a person in sales and marketing who does the budget for sales and marketing, right? That's how it's going to work. And then we'll see how we can go. All right. So that's the plan from a kind of holistic kind of data point of view. I do want to talk a little bit about visualization because for all of the good things that Bob's done here, this is not the prettiest looking report for a P&L, right? It's okay. It does, like I'm sure there'd be people out there who were like, man, I would take that over what I've got at the moment. But we want to make the best possible thing we can make. And the best possible thing that I've seen, at least, I've never seen a better income statement that doesn't follow IBCS standards. So this is the next thing we're going to talk about. I think I had it on my list. IBCS, International Business Communication Standard. Is there, I want to know if there's people how many people know about IBCS? Just put like a 1 in the chat. If you know what you've seen IBCS stuff before. I don't know what the Michael, very expectantly, Michael said 1. Shelley said minus 9,999. Okay, awesome. Shelley, you're going to love this. Okay, so a few people. We've got like 6 or so people. How many people in the chat? 37. Okay, so not as many as I'd probably expect. I would probably expect maybe more. So this is going to be good. You're going to like this. IBCS is awesome. What is IBCS? Well, you can just Google it and let's do that and we can have a look. I think I've got the IBCS stuff here somewhere. Here it is. Boom. IBCS.com. IBCS is like I said, the International Business Communication Standard. I don't know what the history of it is. It's like some guy, university type guy, came up with some standards for generating things like financial income statements. And you can see, look at these platinum sponsors over here. This is a Power BI custom visual. This is also a Power BI custom visual. This is not a Power BI custom visual. So you can see that these Power BI custom visual guys really love IBCS standards. And there's a good reason why, is because IBCS looks really good. Here's a good little example. This is Zebra BI. These guys, the platinum sponsor from before, but this has got a nice visual of animated visual showing all the different IBCS standards, right? So IBCS is a standard for creating financial reporting type things to clearly communicate, particularly things like variance and all the rest of it. So they've got a set of communication standards where they define, you have to make it look like this so that it's properly clear and all the rest of it, which this is great for Power BI people, because that means we don't have to think as hard about how we should visualize this. And in my opinion, these create the best looking income statements. Income statement is this one basically down here. That's kind of what they use. They use these waterfall charts. So you've got a few different bits and pieces. So yes, Zebra BI, Andre, met him a few times. He's a great guy. He builds his custom visual. There's also Info River. Also have a custom visual that follows IBCS standards, and they're IBCS certified, as you can see here. So that's these guys, inforiver.com. Zebra BI is zebrabi.com. Give them a plug. Why not? They're good Power BI parts of the Power BI community. These are paid visuals, though. They're paid. You have to pay for them. I think there's free versions, and we'll probably play around with the free versions of them. But if you want to get started quickly and you want to get going, and probably what I'll do is I'll use the Zebra BI one. then we'll use that in the short term. In the medium term, I think there are a couple of the updated matrix that just got released as a part of the new Power BI visuals. So that's one of these guys. Is the matrix? Oh, maybe I don't have it enabled, or is it not GA yet? Ugh. Anyway, the new custom visual matrix supports a lot of what you can do in IBCS, but not all of it. And then I think you can play around with Deneb and get even better, but obviously that's a bit more work. So I'm gonna think about how we could do that. And Actiris do it. Let's have a look at Actiris, just to give everybody a plug. Hey, Michael, just since you're here and you're looking after me. Actiris. Planning, consolidating, and reporting in Power BI. There you go. Michael works for Actiris, so full disclosure. Do you have some nice IBCS things here somewhere? Probably they do. But these guys do. They've got a custom visual as well that does planning. So most of these guys that do IBCS standards like InfoRiver and Actiris have these special matrices that you can do planning and forecasting and write back and all this stuff out of Power BI. Now, look, full disclosure, sorry, Michael, I'm not a big fan of it putting write back into Power BI. I think it's not the right thing to do. But if you do have to do it, and there are scenarios where you do, then these custom visuals are a good option. But I like Power BI to be a display only solution, and that's what I tell people is best, because I've just had so many bad experiences. So how to build this in such a way so that we're going to do that. We're going to leverage Excel. We're going to do that, but then we're going to use these standards to display our end result, whether that's using Zebra BI or one of the other custom visuals, or we try. What I'd like to do though is do it so that we use as much free stuff as we can. So we'll have a play around with Deneb, see if we can get something that looks good in Deneb. Well, first we'll play around with just the standard matrix and see where it's up to. If that doesn't look good enough for us, then we'll move to Deneb. If that doesn't look good enough for us, then we'll pick a custom visual and use it, because we do want it to be the best possible solution, but I want to have a bit of an explore. So that'll be one lunch and learn sometime in the future. We'll go through those three options. So that's my visualization plan. Okay, so I'm going to visualize using IBCS standards, and we'll see how we go. All right. That's IBCS. Very interesting. And you can get like certified, become a certified IBCS person. I should make one of the D. Watson guys do it. It'd be good. Maybe Alex, because he's the finance guy. Is Alex here? If he is, then don't tell him. All right. So that's what we're doing on the budget versus actual model side. So we are changing our transactions fact table into include our things. We're going to play around a bit in Excel. We're going to set it up so multiple departments can consolidate all of their budget into a single thing, and then we can make all that happen. There's the new matrix layout. Thanks, Shelley. Let's have a look at this. And we're going to use IBCS standards to display our P&L in the end, and then talk about what we can do from there. Yes, the new layout. Yes, yes, we love the new layout. So one of the features of like IBCS is that you can do these type of waterfall type graphs, except inside your matrix. And I don't know if you can do that in the new matrix visual yet, but maybe. I know you can do data bars, and data bars can go up and down. So maybe we could figure out how to do it. But yeah. Anyway, that's that fun. So that's going to be the reporting side of the fence. Now let's talk about the fabric side of the fence, right? So we've got data coming from multiple locations because we've got multiple departments, and that data needs to come into Fabric. So we need the departments to save it somewhere. We're going to just use one lake to make it the easiest possible solution. What you might have to do in the real world is make them save it to SharePoint and then set up like a Power Automate or a data flow or something that pulls it from SharePoint into one lake. I guess we could do that. Wouldn't take too much work. The So those multiple department sheets are going to come in. We're going to bring that in. We're going to go from that's going to be raw data, including the data out of our ERP system as well. All of that stuff is going to all get sucked in. We're going to transform it we're going to standardize it into silver. We're going to take it from silver to gold, turn it into our dimensional model that we see here in Power BI. This guy, except better. And then we're going to model it up, create some measures, build our report, and publish it. So that's going to be our end-to-end kind of scenario, including all of the Fabric stuff. We need to figure out how to organize our workspaces to support this, taking into consideration everything we spoke about last week, where we want to have multiple developers be able to work on it, to be able to maintain version control, and to publish seamlessly, which means we can't just have one workspace like we've got at the moment. I don't think I've even opened my workspace. Let me sort that out. Yeah, we can't just have one workspace. We need multiple workspaces. I think we kind of touched on it last week, but we can talk about the architecture for Fabric when we're building serious stuff. Okay, so here's our Fabric Friday thing. We've currently just got a report in here. We've got one workspace. It's called Fabric Friday. This is our dev, test, prod, and feature workspace all in one, right? If I want to make a new feature, then I probably will build a new version of the report. Do I publish a new version in here and call it budget versus actual / Greg 14th of the 6th, 2024, and then tell people, oh, if you want to test the new version of the report, click on the 14th of the 6th, 2024 version, right? That's kind of how we're currently set up, the noob's way of doing Power BI, right? But what we want to do is we want to turn in ourselves into pros. So how do we do that? Alex has a question on the budget and forecast. Have you done any experiments with Power On write back add-on? Its architecture is looking similar to proper budgeting solutions in Anaplan, SAP, and Oracle. Yeah, Power On is the Power On's been around for a long time. They've done some really cool stuff back in the day. They did some they had some update hacks and things like that I used to use for before we could do like real time and updates and stuff. I love Power On. What Alex is talking about here. We'll give everybody an equal plug, hey? Power On, Power BI, planning. Surely it's here somewhere. Power On, Visual Planner, App Source. Yeah, that's the right one. Well, everybody's overtaken there. Let's have a look at that one. So this is the visual. I don't know, and that's the logo, but I don't know where their website is. Should be here somewhere. But this has write back capability. It's like a matrix with write back capability that can write back. And then, everybody's, I think, is moving to this one lake architecture. There's lots of interesting stuff you can do. But with the caveat, Greg says, don't like it. Don't like write back in Power BI. Shouldn't be there. It's a reporting tool. Anyway, maybe I'll just be wrong one day. And I often am. Okay, so back to our what we do with our workspaces. So what we need to be able to do, and so the recommended architecture for when you're developing in Power BI with lots of stuff, and somebody posted like some really good architecture diagrams. So I'm just going to hackily draw them because I don't have access to them right now. And so I just apologize in advance. I got it. So we have developer person here. And then that person publishes. Well, they're using Power BI desktop to make their stuff. Okay. PD. So our developers using Power BI desktop. So they need to, in order to get the latest version of the report, so they need to be synced with our repository, which we spoke about last time in Azure DevOps. Okay, so that's our repo. So the repo comes back into Power BI desktop with our latest version of the report. Here's our little report. Okay. So that syncs back into Power BI desktop. Then developer person saves that to their local machine. which is into a folder. Then we used GitHub for Windows and or Visual Studio Code and or Visual Studio Enterprise and or whatever tool you like. But I used GitHub, so I'll just write GH. GitHub is going to sync that to Azure DevOps, ADO. And if you're confused by all of this, I don't blame you. And this is exactly what we did last week. So if you missed that session, that's why you're confused. Okay. Gets synced to Azure DevOps. And then finally, Azure DevOps, well, it actually goes into the repository here, doesn't it? And then the repository goes up to the Azure DevOps like that. And then Azure DevOps puts it into a workspace. Okay. So that's the current state. That's as far as we've gotten. Okay, so we have our Power BI file. Just to quickly demonstrate to that for you folks that haven't seen this yet. Recordings. I'll put. I was just talking to Nabila, I think it was. I'm going to put the recordings from last week into this chat, so you'll be able to access them directly. But they will go up on YouTube this week anyway. So, but if you don't want to wait, then I'll chuck the recording in the chat. But just to give you the quick idea of what happened. So every time I save this file, I hit save. This file gets saved. Now we're using the current PBIP format. PBIP format. This is the new format. Okay, so we saved as PBIP when we first did it. That PBIP format saves it into our special folder here on my local machine, which can't remember where it is. It's in GitHub or something, isn't it? Probably could find it. Oh, actually, I'll open it in GitHub desktop, and then that will find it. Okay, so show an explorer. Okay, won't worry about that for now. So it saves it to this folder, this GitHub Friday Fabric budget versus actual .report folder, right? This is where it lives. Okay, so on my OneDrive, there's the PBIP file right there. Now, when you create a PBIP file, you get all this extra stuff, right? Once that gets saved, I can open my GitHub desktop. That is a Git repository that's been saved, and you can see the changes that have been made. This is the changes. And then I have to publish from here. I say, I made some changes during lunch and learn. Then I commit, and then I pushes that up to Azure DevOps, our repository. We go to Azure DevOps, which is one of these, except I can't go to that one. So let me just go over here first. Go to the right project, which is my Friday Fabric project. Here we are in Azure DevOps. I've got my Friday Fabric project. Here's my repo. Just waiting for it to load, I guess. We can maybe have a look at commits. No, it's still loading. Here's all the changes I've made, including the one I just made. I made some changes during lunch and learn. That's the most recent commit. I can look at that. I can see the changes that were made, all the cool things that we love in proper version control. And this repo is synced to my my actual workspace, which I have closed or have done something with. Here it is. And so this is synced, and details of how to do that last week to my report. So those changes that I just made, like where I did some stuff here, and we could do another change right now and publish it, and you can see that it syncs it immediately, right? So we'll make a change, insert a text box. Hello. There's my change. Hit save. Now the change hasn't happened in the report yet. We can have a look at the report. Here's the current version of the report. Okay, it's got blah, 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 blah in it and all that stuff. Okay, so now we need to sync the changes that for this one. So we'll hit save. Hopefully I've got the right one open. GitHub Friday Factory. Yeah, that's the right one. Okay, cool. Oops. Back here. Okay, that's saved. Open GitHub. It says, hey, you made some changes. Yes, I made changes. Changes. Commit. Push. Pushing it to the repo. And then wait for the sync to happen because we don't need to do anything else now. It should just sync automatically when we go back here. Oh, how much do you like source control? Here is some changes that got made on budget versus actual. Hit the update button to get the sync happening. Updating from Git. Update required. It's now synced. And now hopefully, hello, there it is. It worked, okay? And then I don't know why the filters aren't working and stuff. I've probably done something weird, but probably have to reset all the filters or something, don't I? Reset. Yeah. Weird how, I haven't synced the data yet. I've only synced the report and not the data. That's right. We didn't do this last week either. So the actual report is correct. Like the report metadata is correct, but the data itself, I actually haven't refreshed that data inside the inside Fabric. We'll get to that later. But the hello came through, so that's correct, right? So that's what we were expecting to see. So that's that current architecture that we spoke about at length last week. All right, so that's what's happening here. Now we might have a scenario where we have another developer. Dun dun dun. And they've got Power BI Desktop. And they also want to make a change to the report. So they get it out of the repository and they bring it into desktop. And then they also publish it to a folder and they sync it to their GitHub and push it in, and then GitHub puts it back into the repository this way. And you say, well, how can we get it so that I want to be able to have this person publish their changes up to Power BI, right? So that users can test it. Can you please test this new change? But I don't want to affect my production because I've got lots of users using this one. And we want them to keep using it. These are this is the test group, and this is the production everybody group. Okay. And also, simultaneously, I want this person to work on a different feature. And I want another group of users to test that feature down here. Or the same, doesn't matter. And so now we get into a more complex scenario again, right? Which is a multi-developer scenario where you've got people that need to be able to create versions of your solution and have people test that completely independently of your production version. So we can't just smash over the top of our report here because this will break it for everybody in the world. And that will cause problems. So what's the architecture? How do we do this? This is where we get into multiple workspaces, okay? So we need more workspaces. We actually need from our thing, we need a workspace for this, which is this guy's development workspace. And we need a workspace for this, which is this girl's development workspace. And they can test feature branches here in their own workspaces, okay? And we need this, which is our currently just our production workspace. P for production. So F for feature, P for production. And then because the powers that be said you can't just publish directly into production. No one's allowed to do that anymore. IT security said that we're not allowed to publish directly to production unless you're Shelley, and then Shelley can do it. No. um, Someone asked about PBIR format. PBIR format is PBIR format is just a part of PBIP format. It's here. PBIR. I was really, yeah, like who was it? Someone released a video like PBIR formats here, and I'm like, oh, another format. Oh my God. But PBIR is just the report part. So because I made that change to the report, but the data didn't come through, what actually happens is only the PBIR file gets updated, which is part of the PBIP file family. And so the report definition goes one way, and then the model definition and the data goes the other way. And that becomes the semantic model, which is this model.bim format and diagram layout.json, right? So PBIR format is the definition of the report itself. So you can have multiple reports pointing to the same data set, blah, 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 blah. So that's what PBIR is. Okay. Back to our little architecture. Whoa, look at all these people going everywhere in boxes. Okay, but IT said you're not allowed to publish, unless you're Shelley, you're not allowed to publish into production. What you need to do is first publish into a development workspace. So this is no longer production, and our users don't access here anymore. We add a further complicating factor. We want you to use a proper development pipeline now. You first have to publish to a development workspace. Then you have to have that tested correctly and signed off by the users, which is your user test group here. And then it has to go to production. Because this report is a mission critical report and we don't want people to break it. And this is where all the masses get their hot insights. Okay. So now we have a dev test prod scenario. We have feature workspaces. So we've got to create a bunch of workspaces. Data security issue, yes. When we follow this process, does the report data get moved into Git? Becomes a data security issue. No, it's not the report data doesn't get moved into Git. In fact, PBIP format doesn't move the data. That's because and that's why when we look at my report, there's no data in it. No data. Where's the data? Because PBIP format is a metadata format only. It doesn't ship the data up into the thing. In order to get the data in, what we have to do is set up the data into our model, right? So that's to get around that whole idea. It's metadata, yeah. So you need to set up the gateway and the refresh and all that stuff. It becomes like as if you were kind of setting it up like a data flow type thing. Yeah, so that's a thing you need to keep in consideration as well. But you know, when you're doing this the serious way, we're being serious today. So, you know, we're doing things the proper way and we don't create any data security issues like that. Cool. So our data. Okay, so we've got a situation where we need to have feature workspaces and then we need to publish up to GitHub. But we don't want these people publishing directly into a feature workspace, right? That's not secure. So we don't do this. And we don't do this. Instead, the way that they're supposed to do it is they create a branch in GitHub. Oh, it's a straight line today. And then this becomes a branch workspace here and here. So they branch off, actually probably comes out of here, to be honest. Into the workspaces. I need a way to designate something as a workspace. Okay, workspaces are red. This might be the neatest drawing I've ever done with my mouse. Oh, just ruined it. Okay. So Azure DevOps is going to handle our branching scenarios. What's a branch, you say? So that's where we did talk about it a little bit last week. So when we create it, when we want to branch, so we've got our main pipeline, right? Which is just someone builds some stuff, it gets published into thing, you create a PBIP file, the report definition gets updated, your data gets updated, and it goes into a workspace. That's our main branch. Or trunk, sometimes people call these things, right? So when I just followed that process earlier in GitHub, I was just publishing to main. See how it says commit to main down the bottom here, right? And the main is actually highlighted. And that's because I'm on the main branch. Look at that. There's a main branch, okay? And so if I want to developer A and developer B, and we'll use a different color. We'll use star color. That's cool. Okay, so if developer A wants to create a branch, they have to branch off. So that's create a copy of the code. So this is the code as at this point in time. What's as at this point in time, I should say. And then they say, this is my copy of the code as at that point in time. Then they do stuff to it, right? They do some stuff to it. They save another copy of the code here. And then they say, okay, it's ready to go into production. And it goes back in like this. And you see this a lot in CI/CD pipelines. And this is a feature branch. And then developer B, who has a different color again. Oh, do I have any other colors? Let's go red. No, let's go black. Developer B, they might branch off here. Oh, it's not black. And then they might come back in here. And these dots are saves where people have saved it. Okay. So what you have is these scenarios where developer A gets this copy of the code and then they make their own versions here and here, and then they go to merge back in, but stuff's been changed, right? And saved along the way. And so this is why it's called a merge, because they have to then, when they go back in, and that's what those views are about when we looked at Azure DevOps, and it shows, hey, look at these changes that happened. This is where you say, oh, okay, I need to merge in what was with what the difference between the two things, because the version of the code that when I branched off is different to to what it is now. And so there might be what you have called conflicts. You have conflict, you need to do conflict resolution because A and B might be working on the same piece of code in a Power BI context, like you might be working on the same report page, and maybe developer A does this and then reduces that by this like that. And then developer B in their version, they do this and then they do this, right? So that will change that code. The same code will have two different values depending on developer A and developer B, okay? And so that's when developer A merges their changes in, they're going to be like, okay, no worries, that there's no conflict because no one's changed that since you did it. But then when developer B comes along here, they had this version of the code, A had this version of the code. Now that's changed since, because this commits happened, right? And so that's where you have conflict and you go, okay. And at that point, developer B has to make a decision. He's got to go, do I want or sometimes there's another person actually that is in charge of it all that says, okay, which version is correct? Developer A's version where they moved it up in the corner, or developer B's version where they moved it down and across and in, right? So that's where but the good thing about that is you're only having to resolve conflicts where both developers have changed the same code and all the other code just goes through because there's no changes. It doesn't matter. So you get the minimum number of things you have to figure out. But this is the whole purpose, and this is like the whole purpose of Git repositories and branching and merging. This is about as complex as it gets from this perspective, and this is why it exists. because when you've got multiple developers working on features at the same time, you can create conflict because they both edit the same thing at the same time. So we need to set up much more complex infrastructures to deal with those in a safe way. So that's what we're going to do because we're building the best possible thing that could ever be. And so we're going to set up, I'm going to, during the week, what I'll do is I'll set up these workspaces, 2 feature branches workspaces and 3 more workspaces. And we'll set up this pipeline. And that's called our deployment pipeline, right? And we'll talk about how that deployment pipeline is going to work so that dev, test, and prod, because we don't want to have to publish it here and publish it here and publish it here and publish it here and publish it here. Like that's boring and will take forever. And this is going to be all automated. We just want to save once. As a developer, we're going to save once. If there's a conflict, we resolve the conflict. That's it. Done. We're done. Okay, so even though this seems like it's much more complicated, it actually makes your developer life much faster, easier, everything works better, etc., etc. But we run out of time, so we can't talk about it anymore. If you want an update on how we got to that first piece, then check out last week's session. Come back next week. We'll see what we're talking about then. I'm not sure, but we'll set all of this stuff up. I want to set up. I'll have a bit of a play around with that data model for the forecasting thing, and I'll prove myself right and or wrong. Hopefully right, and then hopefully we'll be at a stage where we can start to then actually build stuff. Like right now, we've kind of just tooled around the edges. Now what we're going to do is actually start building. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to add this feature, and then we're going to build it, and then we're going to publish it, and we're going to do all that stuff as if we're real developers. So that's it. That's the end. Thanks, folks. Great to see you all. Go back to work now. It's Friday though, so have a good weekend, and yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.